There exists a threshold in human understanding, a line drawn not by ignorance but by a nascent, terrible wisdom. It is the point where the quest for knowledge curdles into transgression, where uncovering the universe's mechanisms risks unraveling the observer. My presence here, buried beneath kilometers of Antarctic ice, is predicated on the fear that humanity, in its relentless curiosity, has finally stumbled across that line. The institution I serve, the Vatican, though often perceived as archaic, maintains a quiet, watchful office, the Office for Theological Risk in Physics. It exists for moments like this, dispatching observers like myself not to proselytize or condemn, but to witness. My doctorate is in theoretical physics, my minor in linguistics, but my classified designation within the United States Department of Energy is simpler, starker: observer of cosmological theoretical threats. My task is to stand at the precipice and gauge the fall. The room is an exercise in sensory deprivation, walls lined with acoustic foam the color of bleached bone, the air processed to an almost painful neutrality. It smells of nothing, which is somehow more oppressive than the filtered dryness that usually clings to the halls of the polar array. I sit immobile on a polymer stool, facing a man whose entire being seems dedicated to the reduction of human complexity into data points. Jerick Horn, exposure auditor for the DOE's Behavioral Integrity and Containment Division, BIC, as it's dryly known, watches the readouts of the device currently mapping the electrical currents of my brain. This is the Veridex, the Psycho-Cognitive Contamination Monitor, a product of DARPA's less publicized ventures into the messy territory where advanced physics meets the fragility of the human mind. Its purpose, as stated in the clinical jargon of its manual, is to measure exposure to non-human epistemic logic systems. In plainer terms, it seeks to quantify the degree to which contact with the truly alien might rewrite one's thoughts, one's very perception of reality. A necessary tool, perhaps, in an age where we beam high-energy lasers at suspected alien megastructures light years away. A hubristic one, certainly. Can one truly measure the contamination of the soul with biofeedback sensors and statistical algorithms? I doubt it, but BIC requires these benchmarks. Baseline cognitive functions stable, Horn murmurs, his voice as flat as the monitor display he studies. His eyes, magnified slightly behind the lenses of his glasses, flick across streams of data. Tethered to the frame is a slim, almost invisible filament, leading to a near-contact lens overlay. The Panther HUD, predictive awareness neural tethered heads-up display. Standard issue for personnel like Horn, it integrates biometric feedback, cognitive state monitoring from the Veridex, and crucially, telemetry feeds from the National Security Agency's orbital assets and the Oracle network itself. Even now I catch a ghost image flicker within his lens, a transient string of corrupted symbols, noise that has become increasingly common since the Barnard star event. Emotional regulation within parameters. No significant recursion patterns detected in semantic association pathways. He makes a small notation on a physical datapad, its surface layered with complex pre-printed matrices, delusion vectors, exposure metrics. Redundancy, I know, against the very data corruption his HUD displays. Your readings remain remarkably consistent, Dr. Linvale, almost textbook baseline. There's an edge to his tone, not quite accusation, but a sliver of analytical suspicion. Others, exposed to even preliminary fragments of the Dyson harmonic data, are apparently showing deviations, pattern lock-on, chronothought disorders, what Horn clinically terms alignment drift. My stability, it seems, is anomalous in itself. Consistency is often a matter of framework, Mr. Horn, I reply, keeping my voice level. Some frameworks are more resilient to paradox than others. He glances up. Or perhaps some frameworks mistake rigidity for resilience, he counters, before returning his focus to the data stream. The distinction becomes critical when the paradox actively attempts to reshape the framework. The paradox. It began less than a month ago, yet it feels like an age. Oracle Array, officially the orbital relay for anomalous celestial and Lagrange events, a joint NASA, DARPA, and NSA venture using deep space laser interferometry and quantum receivers, was fulfilling its quiet mandate, scanning the cosmos for signs of non-terrestrial engineering, for techno-signatures that might signify threats beyond our current comprehension. Focused on Barnard's star, a mere 6 light-years distant, it detected something extraordinary. The fragment of a Dyson shell. Not a shining sphere harvesting stellar energy, but a vast, dormant segment, built from materials that seem to dampen energy and gravitational fields, warping the light around it. Standard procedure, under such circumstances, involves cautious probing. A high-energy laser pulse was transmitted, a focused beam of inquiry aimed across the interstellar gulf. Standard physics dictated a light travel delay. 6 years for the pulse to reach Barnard's star, another 6 for any reflection to return. Instead, 17 minutes after the pulse was sent, instruments here at the Polar Array expanded from the old IceCube project into a deep ice quantum observatory designed to track substellar signals, recorded a neutrino burst. Not from Barnard's star, but from beneath our feet, erupting from the ancient bedrock under the Antarctic ice crust. The signal structure precisely mirrored the outgoing laser pulse, phase inverted, reflected through the planet itself. On that same day, synchronized atomic clocks worldwide registered a simultaneous, minute jitter, a slip, measured in Planck time, the smallest theoretical unit, a tremor in the fabric of causality. Back at Oracle, the Dyson fragment began broadcasting. Not energy, not conventional radio waves, but gravitational harmonics, vibrations in space-time itself, rippling between Barnard's star and our own soul. Cryptographic analysis by the NSA revealed the signal wasn't random. It was time-stamped, marking the exact moment our laser pulse had arrived. Something ancient, vast and reactive had stirred. The implications cascaded through the highest, most secret echelons of global power. Oracle's status was immediately elevated to black-violet, a classification reserved for cosmological existential risks, events capable of destabilizing planetary constants, causality, or fundamental reality. Only 2 other events hold that designation. Both remain sealed beyond even my clearance. A new interagency body, Majestic Cell 9, was activated under the Department of Defense, tasked with determining the nature of the Dyson construct and its intent. Passive, reactive, or invasive. And I was quietly dispatched here, to Polar, the apparent ground zero of the Echo, because the calculations suggest the Dyson structure isn't a habitat or a power station. Its architecture, its energy-damping properties, its reactive equilibrium systems, they resemble containment. A prison, built on a stellar scale. And our signal may have just compromised the lock. Worse, the neutrino echo suggests some component, some aspect of whatever is contained, might already be here, encoded, folded into the planet's structure long before we knew to look. The door to the chamber opens, breaking the silence. Colonel Mason Core steps inside, bringing with him the almost subliminal weight of command authority. He's a tall man, broad-shouldered, his US Army uniform immaculate despite the harsh environment. His face is weathered, lines etched deep around eyes that seem to have witnessed too many contingencies go off script. He is the senior operations commander here, Majestic Cell 9's hand on the ground, the conduit between the scientists, the NSA analysts, and the military structure bracing for the unknown. Dr. Linvale, he greets me. A nod acknowledges Horn. Status: baseline stable, Colonel. Horn reports, detaching the Veridex sensors from my temples. No actionable cognitive deviation. Core accepts this with another curt nod. His focus shifts to me. Good. We have developments. Harmonic resonance readings from sub-level C have increased by 12% in the last hour. Correlated seismic instability detected along the bedrock fault lines beneath the array. He pauses, letting the implications settle. The patterns mimic the primary Dyson harmonic frequency. He holds my gaze. Core is a man of logistics and action, not metaphysics. He deals in tangible threats, containable spills, manageable disasters. This is different. He doesn't need belief from me, he needs assessment. Sensors near the bedrock anomaly, where the sample was extracted, are registering complex energy signatures. They form geometric patterns, ancient-looking according to the analysts. He gestures dismissively. Looks like schematic noise to me, but protocol requires cross-disciplinary review. Your file mentions unconventional expertise. He means my background, the quiet understanding that my role encompasses more than just physics. We need your perspective on these patterns, Doctor. Specifically, any potential overlap with ritualistic or symbolic containment frameworks. He's referring to the trench glass, the core sample retrieved from the bedrock structure deep beneath the ice before the oracle pulse, but analyzed with renewed urgency after the echo. A material unlike any known terrestrial or extraterrestrial geology, biologically inert, yet capable of reflecting neutrinos. A physical impossibility. Its internal structure, under spectroscopic analysis, resonates with the same complex harmonics now emanating from Barnard's star. I will review the data immediately, Colonel, I assure him. The request confirms my deepest fear. The convergence of cutting-edge physics with patterns that whisper of something far older, something buried. See that you do, Core says. Horn, keep monitoring all Tier 5 personnel closely. We can't afford any more unscheduled departures. The reference to a recently vanished technician hangs in the air. As Core turns to leave, gesturing for me to follow, we pass a reinforced observation window looking into another lab. Inside, a younger man, thin and intense, with unkempt hair and eyes that seem fixed on something beyond the screen, paces frantically. Dr. Emery Callan, the NSA's resident genius in harmonic cryptography and linguistic theory. He's surrounded by holographic displays swirling with complex waveforms, the Dyson harmonics rendered visible. He gestures at them, speaks rapidly, seemingly arguing with the patterns themselves, his hands trembling slightly. Core slows his pace, his expression hardening. Callan, he says, he believes he's deciphering a language, thinks the structure is communicating, sending instructions. He shakes his head slightly, a minute gesture of weariness. Horn submits daily reports suggesting progressive semantic contamination, says Callan's losing the line between analysis and assimilation. He looks at me then, a direct, challenging stare. Your assessment of his work and his state will also be valuable, Doctor. We need to know if he's finding answers, or just becoming part of the problem. We step out into the main corridor of Polar Array Level B, a warren of prefabricated modules linked by pressure-sealed tunnels, the air humming with filtration systems and the deeper, almost sub-audible thrum of the immense machinery below. The overhead lighting casts a blue-white glare on the polished composite floors. It's a place built for science, for isolation, for control. Yet, walking behind Core, the pervasive hum feels different now. It seems to resonate within my own bones, a low frequency that aligns with something I shouldn't recognize. It's not memory, not déjà vu, it's a feeling of dreadful familiarity, as if this place, built to listen to the cosmos, was somehow tuned long ago to receive this specific signal. My mission crystallizes further, not just to observe the boundary, but to understand if Earth itself was designed as part of it. The silence between the harmonics feels vast, ancient, and perhaps attentive. And I am here to listen to that silence, praying we haven't already said too much. The descent to Sublevel C was a journey into increasing oppression. Colonel Core led the way, his boots striking the metal gangways with grim purpose. Jerick Horn followed, his usual clinical detachment slightly frayed, his eyes darting towards the conduit pipes and junction boxes as if expecting them to betray some new, aberrant signal. I brought up the rear, acutely aware of the null-tied coil I now wore strapped to my forearm. Standard issue for anyone operating near potential high-gravity or exotic mass environments, The flexible, skin-worn device was designed to dampen localized gravitational fluctuations. Its feedback, a counter-pressure against my skin, was active down here, suggesting warps in the local space-time fabric, distortions with no discernible massive cause. Core had simply stated it was precautionary. I suspected it was rapidly becoming necessary. We reached a heavy blast door marked with stark yellow and black hazard symbols. Sector Gamma 7, quarantined materials and anomalous resonance zone. Core swiped his access card, and the door opened, revealing a chamber bathed in the dim, unsteady glow of emergency lighting. In the center of the room, within a multi-layered transparent containment vessel, sat a fragment of the trench glass. It was no larger than a human fist, a shard of obsidian-like material, utterly black, absorbing all light. Yet it wasn't truly dark. It possessed an internal nullity, a void that seemed to drink the sparse illumination from the room. Around the containment unit, an array of sensors flickered erratically. "The sample is stable," Core stated, "but the ambient harmonic bleed in this chamber has increased by another 4% since my last update. The localized field distortions are pronounced." He gestured towards a section of the far wall where the metal seemed to shimmer, the lines of a structural support beam momentarily wavering as if seen through heated air. "My team reports momentary temporal flickers, equipment malfunctions. Nothing catastrophic yet, but the trend is upward." Horn, despite his earlier skepticism about my role, was now meticulously scanning the environment with a handheld diagnostic tool, its small screen displaying cascading strings of what looked like corrupted code. "Localized spatial interference confirmed," he muttered. "Panther HUD is registering phantom telemetry consistent with gravitic lensing, but the mass calculations are impossible. It's as if the space itself is folding." My attention, however, was drawn to a holographic display unit beside the trench glass containment. It showed the deep ice sensor logs Core had mentioned, patterns relayed from the bedrock anomaly far below. They were intricate structures, undeniably geometric, forming repeating, almost crystalline motifs. And as I studied them, a chill deeper than the Antarctic cold traced its way down my spine. The lines, the angles, the way certain nodes connected to form larger, self-similar patterns. They were not merely reminiscent of ancient ritual diagrams. In places, they were identical. Specifically, they mirrored motifs found in certain suppressed 4th century Gnostic texts, eschatological diagrams purporting to map the pathways of souls through hostile cosmic hierarchies, or more disturbingly, to delineate methods of binding or containing transmundane entities. I made no outward sign, carefully schooling my features, but the recognition was a weight in my gut. I would record this in my journal later, in the precise block script I favored, safe from digital eavesdropping or the potential for AI-driven misinterpretation. The implications were too profound, too dangerous, to voice casually in this room, under the watchful, pragmatic eyes of Core and the analytical gaze of Horn. We didn't linger. The atmosphere in Gamma 7 was physically taxing. Back in the relative normalcy of Core's command center, a cramped module overflowing with monitors and communication arrays, Dr. Emery Callan was waiting. He looked worse than when I'd seen him through the lab window. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair even more disheveled, and a tremor ran through his hands as he clutched a datapad. He radiated an unnerving intensity, the fervor of a prophet on the verge of revelation, or perhaps delusion. "Colonel, Dr. Linvale," he began, his voice hoarse but rapid, "I've made a breakthrough, a significant one." He activated a wall-mounted display, and it filled with the now familiar waveforms of the Dyson harmonics, but overlaid with complex annotations, symbols and phonetic markers of Callan's own devising. It's not just patterns, not just reactive echoes. It's language, structured, recursive, with undeniable syntax. I've isolated phonemic clusters, potential grammatical operators. He tapped a control and a synthesized sound filled the room, a series of clicks, drones, and resonant pulses derived from the harmonics. It was alien, deeply unsettling, yet beneath the strangeness I heard it again. That disquieting cadence, the rise and fall that mirrored, however distortedly, the intervals of Gregorian plainsong. It was a connection my mind made involuntarily, a product perhaps of my own unique framework. This, Callan declared, his voice rising with conviction, is what I'm calling the benediction pulse. It's not a threat, Colonel. It's instructional. It's trying to teach us something, to guide us. Kor listened. Guide us to what, Dr. Callan? To alignment, Callan said, his eyes shining. To resonance. I believe Earth, our very planetary system, is a receptor designed, perhaps seeded, to receive this. Our brains, our capacity for ritual, for grammar, for pattern recognition, they're not accidental. They're predisposed to this syntax. Pareidolia, Doctor, Horn interjected, his voice cutting through Callan's fervor. The human tendency to perceive meaningful patterns in random data. Your Veridex readings show significant cognitive skew, Dr. Callan. Semantic overlay is pronounced. You're not interpreting the signal. It may be interpreting you. Callan whirled on Horn, his face flushed. My mind is clearer than it's ever been. You see contamination. I see comprehension. This isn't noise. It's waiting for us to respond. He turned back to Kor, almost pleading. The structure isn't malevolent. It's part of a cosmic liturgy. Kor held up a hand, silencing him. Your findings are noted, Dr. Callan. Continue your analysis, but report all further hypotheses through Mr. Horn for validation. The dismissal was polite, but firm. Callan, deflated but still vibrating with suppressed excitement, gathered his datapad and left, muttering about the rhythm of the spheres. He's deteriorating, Horn stated flatly once Callan was gone. Pattern lock-on is accelerating. He's exhibiting classic symptoms of what some fringe theorists call descender's logic, the belief that deeper understanding of an anomalous system necessitates a corresponding decay in one's prior cognitive reality. It's often associated with irreversible outcomes. He consulted his own datapad. Speaking of which, Technician Ian Vellum, Signal Array Maintenance, Sublevel C, is now officially listed as absent without authorization. He was last logged near the primary signal damping coil in Sector Delta 9. His Veridex showed advanced pattern obsession and chrono-thought disorder. His final personal log entry, recovered from his terminal, consisted of 3 words. Heard my name. The quiet pronouncement hung in the air, another piece of the encroaching dread. Vellum, the quiet, chain-smoking technician I'd occasionally seen in the commissary, the one who reportedly kept strange audio tapes. Gone, consumed by the hum. Later, in the relative privacy of my own small quarters, a Spartan room furnished with little more than a bunk, a desk, and a secure terminal, I attempted to access the Polar Array's historical archives. I was searching for any information on my predecessor, Father Corbin Hale, the spiritual advisor embedded here during the Array's early construction phases, decades before Oracle, before the Dyson discovery. The system, however, was proving uncooperative. My queries about Hale yielded heavily redacted files, error messages, and once, a string of corrupted text that, when I painstakingly reconstructed it, bore a chilling resemblance to phrases from the inverse psalm, that suppressed fragment of supposed non-human dogma recovered from a corrupted Q-ring feed. The light that binds must never be free. The orbit holds the prayer. The prison must not sleep. It felt less like a system glitch and more like a deliberate, almost sentient obstruction. The day ended with a summons back to Kor's command center. An urgent atmosphere crackled in the air. A new crisis. The primary monitor displayed a live feed from Gamma 7, the chamber housing the trench glass. The image was periodically disrupted by static, but the central focus was clear. The trench glass, usually an inert shard of absolute black, was different. It shimmered, not with reflected light from within the chamber, but with an internal luminescence that beat with a slow rhythm. And as we watched, silent and transfixed, The surface of the glass swirled, and for a horrifying instant, it resolved into a recognizable image. A vast stellar vista swirling clouds of incandescent gas, the fiery surface of a star seen from close range. It was, unmistakably, the surface of Barnard's star. Callan, who had been brought in, gasped, a sound of ecstatic confirmation. "It sees! It reflects! It's the connection made manifest!" Horn, his face pale, merely stated, "Containment breach. Epistemic and quite possibly physical. The object is acting as a live remote observational conduit." Core's voice was like iron. "Seal Gamma 7. Full spectrum isolation. No personnel access without my direct authorization." He turned to me, his eyes grim. "Dr. Linvale, you said consistency is a matter of framework. What framework accounts for that?" I looked at the screen, at the reflection of a distant star held within a fragment of rock pulled from Earth's deepest foundations. It wasn't just a reflection, it was a mirror. And the ancient, terrible question rose in my mind. What precisely was looking back through it? And why did Earth hold its twin? The line between discovery and transgression felt not just crossed, but obliterated. We were no longer observers. We were participants in a dialogue whose terms we were only beginning, disastrously, to comprehend. The harmonic hum of polar array suddenly felt like the resonant frequency of a trap, long set and now, finally, sprung. The aftermath of the trench glass revelation settled over polar array like a shroud. Quarantine protocols, once procedural, were now rigidly enforced under the distant, increasingly panicked directives filtering down from majestic Cell 9. Security patrols moved through the corridors with a new, tense vigilance. Conversations in the commissary died when I approached, eyes sliding away. Fear had replaced the cautious curiosity of scientific inquiry. It was the ancient fear of the unknown, compounded by the terrifying possibility that the unknown was not just observing us, but reflecting, through materials buried in our own world. The strain was most visible in Jerick Horn. I found him not in the Veridex monitoring suite, but in his cramped, windowless office, hunched over stacks of printouts and physical notebooks filled with dense, handwritten notations. The Veridex terminal on his desk sat dormant, draped incongruously with a standard-issue grey thermal blanket, as if he could shield himself from its increasingly aberrant data by simply not looking. The room smelled of stale coffee and ozone, the scent of a mind working itself ragged against an intractable problem. He didn't look up immediately when I entered, his pen scratching furiously across a page, pre-printed with intricate matrices I recognized as cognitive deviation trackers. "The digital systems are compromised," he stated without preamble, finally pausing his writing but not meeting my eyes. Or perhaps more accurately, they are becoming too accurate. He tapped a thick sheaf of papers near his elbow. "Hard copies, analog analysis. It's slow, archaic, but less susceptible to recursive feedback." He pushed a single printout across the desk towards me. It showed a recent Veridex scan log, flagged with multiple critical alerts. One value leapt out, circled repeatedly in red ink. Cognitive Exposure Index, 1.37. "That reading is theoretically impossible, Mr. Horn," I observed quietly. "The scale is capped at 1.0, representing complete saturation by an external epistemic framework." "Precisely," Horn said, finally looking at me. The usual analytical detachment in his eyes was gone, replaced by a weary, haunted uncertainty. "The system attempts to quantify influence. But what if the influence isn't merely external? What if it resonates with something latent, something internal, amplifying it beyond the theoretical maximum? What if the contamination isn't infection, but resonance? Worse still," he lowered his voice, leaning closer, "the temporal inconsistencies logged from the Ravel drone data, the ones showing personnel reacting before the signal arrived. They defy causal models. My algorithms can model paradox, Dr. Linvale, but they cannot resolve retroactive causality. It implies the effect preceded the cause." He rubbed his temples, a gesture of profound intellectual fatigue. My framework, the entire BIC methodology, it's predicated on linear time, on observable cause and effect. This, he gestured vaguely at the stacks of paper, at the shrouded terminal. This operates outside those parameters. You seem unaffected. Your baseline holds. I had no easy answer for him, only the framework I had offered before. Perhaps some structures are designed to contain paradox, Mr. Horn, rather than be broken by it. Later, seeking refuge from the tension, I accessed the station's limited historical archives, focusing again on Father Corbin Hale. This time I bypassed the corrupted digital interface and located a physical index leading to a secure vault containing old personnel effects and analog records. Among dusty boxes of photographic slides and cassette tapes, I found a small collection of Hale's audio logs, recorded on primitive magnetic tape decades ago. Back in my quarters, I threaded a tape onto an old playback machine salvaged from the archives. Hale's voice, calm and measured, filled the small room, describing the early days of Polar's construction, the challenges of building on the deep ice. Then, the tone shifted. A recurring dream, Hale's recorded voice murmured. I stand within a vast cathedral made of vacuum. The space stretches too far in some places, not far enough in others. Columns that taper into flat planes, arches that fold into themselves and keep folding. Every surface feels precise, but misaligned by half a thought. There is no sound, but the silence itself has weight, a pressure. And I feel observed not by eyes but by the space itself. The array we build here, plunging sensors deep into the ice. Sometimes I fear we are not merely listening. I fear we are creating an echo chamber, inviting something ancient to return thought. As Hale spoke of the silence, an alarm suddenly blared through the station corridor, followed by an automated announcement. Warning, harmonic resonance spike detected. Level Gamma. All non-essential personnel securing quarters. The electronic voice was tinny, urgent. But beneath it, almost subliminally woven into the static burst that followed the announcement, I heard a melodic fragment. Distorted, but unmistakable. It was Hale's voice, humming a simple, chant-like tune that mirrored the cadence of his recorded words about the silent cathedral. An echo from the past, bleeding through the present. Or something else. This unsettling resonance deepened when I cross-referenced Hale's logs with the partially decrypted files from the Ravel drone, the infamous recursive testimony. The temporal inconsistencies were stark, undeniable. Video logs showing technicians in Oracle mission control reacting to data bursts, time-stamped before the drone could have possibly transmitted them, and buried within corrupted audio fragments of that mission feed, slowed down and amplified by NSA analysts. Was that whisper, seemingly generated by the feedback loop itself? The eye was never closed. You were simply born when it blinked. Retroactive causality, a response prepared before the question was asked. It aligned perfectly, terrifyingly, with Hale's fear of returning thought. My contemplation was shattered by an urgent summons. I found Colonel Core and Horn in the main command hub, confronting Dr. Callan. The harmonic cryptographer was incandescent, radiating an almost painful energy. His eyes, when they caught the light from the overhead panels, seemed to possess an inner reflectivity, a subtle mirroring that wasn't quite natural. He held up a transparent screen displaying two complex images side by side. On one side, the intricate interlocking waveforms derived from the Dyson harmonics. On the other, a highly classified schematic, the original architectural blueprint for Polar Array's deepest, oldest and largely undocumented sublevels, built decades ago for purposes no living official seemed to fully recall. The patterns were, to a staggering degree of precision, identical. "Don't you see?" Callan pleaded, his voice strained, ecstatic. It wasn't an accident, it wasn't random. Polar was designed to align with this harmonic structure. The blueprints match the broadcast. We are a receptor, built according to the specifications of the signal itself. He pointed a trembling finger at the schematic. Containment is a misunderstanding, Colonel. A perversion. The structure doesn't want to be imprisoned, it wants to be completed. The harmonics, they form an inverse liturgy, a ritual encoded in space-time resonance. We need to perform our part, broadcast the response, fold the seal inward, stabilize the connection. Stabilize it, Callan, or shatter it, Core countered, his voice dangerously low. Your proposed broadcast overrides every safety protocol. It risks amplifying the harmonic bleed beyond recoverable limits. Risk is necessary for communion, Callan retorted, the mirroring in his eyes flashing. We must complete the prayer. Before Core could restrain him, Callan bolted from the command hub, disappearing down a service corridor, shouting about needing to prepare the resonance array, presumably referring to the station's transmitter systems. He's lost, Horn stated grimly. Fully assimilated. The semantic contamination has become structural. Amidst this escalating chaos, I felt an urgent need for external perspective, however fractured. Bundled against the bitter cold, I made my way across the surface ice to the cluster of disused outbuildings near the original ice cube site. There, as always, sat Dr. Lev Metz, wrapped in layers, staring towards the invisible South Pole. They think it's a machine down there, Metz rasped without turning as I approached, his voice thin as frosted glass. The station's mouth, they call it in the old forgotten logs. He finally looked at me, his eyes ancient and unsettlingly lucid. It's not a machine, Dr. Linvale. Not technology. It's a valve, a linguistic valve. A place where the grammar of this reality thins out, where the syntax can be adjusted. Force won't close it. You can't shoot silence. He coughed, a dry, rattling sound. If you find it, don't try to lock the door. Try to speak the silence it holds. His words, cryptic yet resonant, settled deep within me. Returning to the main complex, a hunch led me back to the archive vault. Rummaging through a mislabeled crate containing Father Hale's personal effects, items deemed irrelevant during the initial cataloguing, my fingers closed around a slim, leather-bound volume tucked beneath old vestments. It was his private prayer journal. Sitting on the cold vault floor, I opened it. The pages were filled with Hale's neat script, prayers, theological musings, but also diagrams, sketches of the bedrock geometry, eerily similar to the sensor logs, notes on Gnostic texts, on binding rituals, and chillingly, pages dedicated to analyzing waveform patterns he claimed to perceive during deep meditation near the array's core, patterns that matched Callan's harmonic displays. Hale hadn't just feared the echo, he had heard it decades ago. He had recognized the structure, speculated about Earth being not a sender or receiver, but a specific point of resonance remembered by a cosmic order. His final entries were frantic, filled with prayers for guidance on how to silence the echo before it becomes the voice, referencing apocryphal rites of inverse liturgy designed not to invoke, but to bind, to impose stillness. He knew, and he tried to leave a warning. As if summoned by my discovery, the entire station groaned. Lights flickered violently, then plunged into emergency reds. Warning! Catastrophic harmonic surge detected, the automated voice screamed over the din. Planetary communication link severed. External command override. Signal lost. Command initiate Cicada, sleep protocol. Isolate node. Vostok offline. The message cut out into roaring static. Cicada sleep, the rumored planetary AI rollback designed to sever compromised nodes from the global network. Majestic Cell 9 had cut us loose. We were alone. On the main command hub screen, overriding all emergency displays, Callan's harmonic patterns flared, cascading across the interface. A new icon flashed. Transmitter array active. Unauthorized broadcast sequence initiated. He's doing it, Core breathed. He's transmitting. Total system collapse was seconds away. Containment was irrelevant. Survival, perhaps reality itself, was on the line. Security team! He roared into his comm. Meet me at access point Delta Sub-Zero. We're going down. Manual override. He looked at Horn, then at me. The station's mouth. It's the only chance. Horn, pale but steady now, nodded sharply. The source event. Data acquisition is paramount. I met Core's eyes. Hale's journal felt heavy in my hand, its fragile pages whispering warnings across the decades. This was the threshold. Observation demanded proximity. Faith demanded witness. We raced through the chaos. Reaching the designated point in Polar's oldest, deepest sublevel, Core's troopers joined us, weapons ready. Behind a rusted maintenance panel, Core located the manual wheel for a massive, archaic pressure door I'd never seen on any schematic. With a grunt of effort, he turned the wheel. Metal shrieked in protest. Rust flaked away. Air hissed cold still, washing over us like a wave from a forgotten sea. It carried no scent, no dust, only profound emptiness. Core pushed the immense door inward. Beyond lay absolute darkness, untouched by Polar's lights. We activated our suit lamps, beams cutting into the void. We stood on the threshold of the unknown. The path Hale had walked, the nexus Callan sought, the place Metz warned of. Leaving the noise and the failing science of the station behind, we stepped across, beginning the descent into the heart of the harmonic silence. The air beyond the threshold was ancient and profoundly still. Stepping through felt like plunging into deep water, the pressure immediate and immense, not of atmosphere, but of something more fundamental. Our suit lamps sliced through an absolute blackness that seemed to actively consume the light yards from its source. The tunnel wasn't constructed. It was carved, seamlessly, from the same bedrock as the trench glass sample upstairs, its surface slick, absorbing all texture and reflection. The geometry was unsettling in a way that bypassed conscious thought and registered directly in the oldest parts of the brain. Corridors curved at angles that felt mathematically unsound, stretching or compressing distances in ways that defied visual reckoning. My null-tied coil pressed insistently against my forearm, its dampening field struggling against unseen gravitic eddies that flickered through the space like currents in an invisible river. The harmonic hum, which had been a physical vibration in the station above, was different here. It resonated within us, a complex, multi-layered thrumming that seemed to pluck directly at neural pathways. Auditory processing warped. The rhythmic clang of Core's boots on the glassy floor ahead sometimes arrived before the sound, sometimes rebounded milliseconds later from directions that made no spatial sense. Whispers seemed to coil at the edge of hearing, fragments of Vellum's last log entry, the synthesized drones of Callan's harmonic analysis, and chillingly, the calm, measured tones of Father Hale's voice, speaking phrases from his decades-old audio logs. We found traces of Father Hale's passage, stark and poignant in the alien darkness. Cryptic symbols, identical to those in his journal, were etched into the wall at a junction where the tunnel seemed to twist back on itself. Warnings or waymarkers left in desperate hope. Further down, fused into the seamless rock as if melted there by unimaginable pressure, was a scorched, leather-bound book, likely his prayer book, its pages now solid, unreadable stone. And then, near what felt like the entrance to a larger space, we saw it. Resting on a natural shelf of the dark rock, like a simple offering on an altar, was a plain wooden cruciform. It was unblemished, untouched by time or the environment, radiating a quiet presence against the overwhelming alienness. Hale had made it this far. He had left this sign, this anchor of human faith, at the very edge of the abyss. Beyond the altar, the tunnel opened into a cavern, vast beyond imagining. Our lights couldn't reach the ceiling or the far walls, giving the impression of infinite Stygian space. But the center commanded all attention. There hung the station's mouth. It wasn't a portal in the conventional sense, but a shimmering instability, a place where the fabric of reality itself looked frayed, like ancient silk worn thin. Within its turbulent, vortex-like structure, glimpses flared and vanished, swirling nebulae of colors unknown to the human eye, perhaps momentary flashes of the incandescent surface of Barnard's star, or the internal architecture of the Dyson structure itself. Raw potentiality bled from it, a pressure that warped the air and made the eyes water. The bedrock structure of the tunnels culminated here, intricate carvings converging, focusing on the rift like a colossal geological antenna aimed at the heart of the anomaly. And directly before it, bathed in its ethereal, unsettling light, stood Dr. Emery Callan. He was terrifyingly changed. His body was no longer entirely solid, but shimmered with translucence, the lines of his form blurred, infused with the rift's own light. His eyes were lost, replaced by perfect mirrored surfaces reflecting the chaotic energy of the vortex. He wasn't interacting with the rift. He was the rift's terrestrial counterpart, a living node of resonance, pulsing in perfect synchrony with the vortex and the distant, unheard Dyson harmonics. He made no sound, yet the harmonic pressure in the cavern intensified around him, drawn and focused by his presence. He was the conduit, the amplifier, actively pulling Earth into a deeper, more violent alignment with the cosmic structure. Forcing an integration, this node, this planet, was perhaps never meant to endure so rapidly. Standing near the edge of the rift's influence, shielded only partially by the cruciform's lingering aura and the straining null-tide coil, understanding flooded my mind. It wasn't verbal, not visual, but a direct systemic comprehension, as if the underlying logic of the universe momentarily imprinted itself onto my consciousness. The Dyson structure wasn't a prison for a monster. It, and this node deep within Earth, and countless others perhaps scattered across the cosmos, were components. Parts of a vast, ancient network designed not to contain a physical entity, but to regulate something far more fundamental. The flow of entropy, the grammar of physical law, the stability of causality itself. The harmonics were its operational language, the functional hymns maintaining equilibrium across cosmic distances. Our oracle pulse hadn't awakened a beast. It had struck a critical tuning fork, jarring the system out of alignment. Now, the network was reacting, forcefully recalibrating, using the pre-existing Earth node as a key point of leverage. Callan, in his desperate yearning for communion, wasn't summoning anything malevolent. He was short-circuiting the calibration, forcing an integration so abrupt, so violent, that it risked shattering the local laws of physics, rewriting reality on this planet, or causing a cascading failure throughout the delicate cosmic structure. As this realization settled, Callan's resonance reached a terrifying crescendo. The rift before him flared, expanding, its internal chaos spilling outwards as waves of pure distortion. "Now!" Core roared, his military instincts taking over. "Fire! Sever the connection!" The troopers raised their carbines, unleashing streams of kinetic rounds. But the projectiles warped mid-flight, curving or simply vanished, absorbed by localized spatial folds flickering around Callan. One trooper screamed as a wave of pure energy erupted from the rift, striking his position. His suit flashed white, then collapsed inwards, leaving nothing but drifting ash. The second trooper was caught by a ribbon of temporal distortion, aging and decaying in a horrifying instant, his gear clattering emptily to the floor. Horn, his recorder still aimed, gave a choked cry as the raw harmonic data overloaded his senses, collapsing in a heap, the small machine still whirring beside him. Core, his face etched with horror and grim acceptance, unslung a heavy demolition charge from his pack. But force was useless here. This wasn't about destruction. It was about resonance, about pattern. Hale's desperate plea, "Silence the echo," and Metz's cryptic advice, "Speak the silence," resonated with the Gnostic diagrams of binding through stillness. This wasn't a battle to be won, but a dissonance to be introduced. I stepped forward, retrieving the simple wooden cruciform from the rock shelf where Hale had left it. Its smooth, worn wood felt grounding amidst the chaos. Ignoring the crushing pressure from the flaring rift, I positioned myself between the vortex and Callan's form. Closing my eyes, focusing my entire will, my training in linguistics and theology converging with the terrifying insight I'd just received, I began to recite. Not a prayer for intervention, but a specific ancient Latin formulary, passages from the Rituale Romanum designed for exorcism, for the establishment of boundaries, for the imposition of sacred order upon chaos. I spoke the words slowly, pouring every ounce of focused intent into them, aiming not to banish, but to interrupt, to overlay the overwhelming harmonics with a pattern of conceptual silence, a frequency of nullity. The effect was immediate and profound. My voice, though barely a whisper against the rift's roar, seemed to strike a discordant note within the system. The intricate flow of energy between Callan and the vortex faltered. Callan screamed, a thin, tearing sound, as the resonance holding him together shattered. His translucent form dissolved, collapsing into a swirling cloud of luminous dust that was instantly drawn into the rift, consumed by the process he had embraced. The vortex itself recoiled, its violent flaring subsided, shrinking slightly, its energy calming from a raging storm into a steady, powerful, watchful hum. The immediate catastrophic crisis had passed. Kor, lowering the charge, stared, his face pale with shock and disbelief. The harmonic pressure lessened, though it didn't vanish. The connection wasn't severed. The station's mouth remained open, a stable tear in the fabric of reality. But something had shifted. The forced integration was halted. Earth's role within the ancient network seemed acknowledged, perhaps, but now subject to a more delicate, less overtly compelled balance. An equilibrium had been reached, albeit a fragile and deeply unnerving one. Months later, the scent of old parchment and beeswax replaced the chill of polar. I sit in a small, secluded carrel deep within the Vatican Library's restricted archives. Outside these ancient walls, the world continued, largely unaware. Polar Array has been permanently sealed, officially designated an unstable geological zone, prone to unpredictable seismic and electromagnetic events. The truth is buried under layers of classification and redacted reports. Jerick Horn resides in a specialized care facility, his brilliant mind shattered, babbling about recursive waveforms, leaving behind terabytes of incomprehensible recordings that NSA cryptographers will likely puzzle over for generations. Colonel Kor accepted early retirement, disappearing into quiet obscurity, refusing all interviews. I open my leather-bound journal, the same one I carried through the depths. Dipping my pen in ink, I begin to write, documenting not just the events, but the understanding gained in those terrifying moments before the rift. I describe the Dyson network not as alien technology, but as a cosmic liturgical structure, its harmonics the operational language of reality's equilibrium. I am changed irrevocably. A heritor, as the oracle slang termed those altered by exposure. But unlike Callan, unlike the researcher scarred by the trench glass, I carry no reflection. My eyes, when I glance at my image in the polished darkness of the ancient wooden desk, are my own. Yet the hum is always there now, a constant subliminal resonance beneath the noise of the world, the baseline frequency of the harmonic seal, the reminder of Earth's permanent, precarious integration into that vast, ancient, and terrifyingly intricate order. An order that knows we are here. An order that demands balance. I write the final sentence for the day, the distillation of the hard-won, fragile peace. Containment is not a wall. It is a state of attention, and the silence must be actively kept.